So I'm laying down while I talk about this because it's my body and I want to be comfortable. But basically, I think that the conflict between veganism and vegetarianism is entirely artificial and manufactured. Um, Vegan as a word only came around in the 70s. It came directly out of vegetarianism. The person who coined it got tired of saying total vegetarian every time he was explaining himself. Um, and I just think that every historical vegetarian, people will read that that person was a vegetarian, and because of this artificial conflict, they're going to not see the fact that vegetarian means plants. That person may have and likely was an animal activist or ecologically aligned or concerned about animals as individuals in their diet, in their practice, and then people now are taking the word vegan and taking the word vegetarian, seeing that they're different, and weaponizing it as though these two things are opposing. Even though it's a fact that vegetarians are more likely to be able to handle a vegan message, even though it's a fact that vegetarians are just more aligned with veganism in their actions and in their ideology. I think that it's actually a really serious disservice whenever vegans are hateful towards vegetarians, and I think that it's a real problem whenever people see these two things as opposed rather than as extensions of one another, which is just historically and literally the case. Like, coming to the conclusion that somebody had to suffer for meat, for to be turned into meat, like, that is a very direct, all of these structures in society, all of these practices are kind of part of taking that person out of the equation whenever they're being turned into food, turned into a product. um Leather is very clearly someone's skin a lot of the time. Meat is very clearly someone's body a lot of the time. And so it's just a lot easier for people to recognize that. And when we're talking about this, we have to understand we're living in a society that is predetermined our relationship with other animals. That is decided for us that we have to relate to them as a superior. And we grow up in this situation, and we're taught against our better instincts that this is the way things are supposed to be, even though it's not the case. Even though we feel instinctually differently. You just understand that other animals are sympathetic, other animals are intelligent, they care. We instinctively recognize them as family members, and as others, as neighbors. You know, it's very clear that something has gone wrong when people are violent openly towards who is recognizably an animal. But that recognition is degraded and and brought out of us by all of these ad campaigns and normalized violences in society that say fishing is fine, milk is fine, it's happy, eggs are fine. Like, this is just getting through layers and layers and layers and layers of different influences that tell us these violences are normal. Okay, so if we see it from that angle, I think it's really clear that vegetarianism and veganism are partnerships. They have a relation that is beneficial, and it bothers me how antagonistic this can become. And I don't mean to paint it as though it is always antagonistic, because it very much isn't. Just like with vegetarianism, many people just haven't been exposed. They just don't know. They literally just don't know any better, and that is congruent with what I said before. And so, in order for us to really move forward collaboratively, we just have to be gentle with one another, and really care. Like, really care. Just say, hey, I recognize that you don't know any better, or even not say that, and just move with that understanding that, hey, that animal mattered just like you, and I know that there's other ways, so let's share. Come share my substitute with me. Come share my alternative with me. Come share my cruelty-free lifestyle with me. Rather than rather than painting people out like they're evil and horrible. And even though it is like the factory farming and hunting and ripping someone's body from them, it is horrible. It is violent. It is terrible. And whenever you recognize that other, whenever you're really respectful to them and you're in relationship with them, not at them, the way that some apologetics will take the position, whenever you really recognize them, it's hard to compromise your allyship with them by being kind to the person who is causing their pain and suffering. But like I said, there's layers to it. And the very same, it's all extensions of one another too. The very same violence that is resulting in the most extreme scenario, as with the factory farmed bodies and factory farmed populations, as with the absolutely genocided aquatic populations, that same violence is the most extreme outcome result of the kind of violence that humans face. So for us to undo these structures, we have to be completely and fully informed whenever we're talking to the other humans. Because the worst case scenario is that person continuing their action that's harmful. The worst case scenario is that person taking their time. The worst case scenario is that person being alienated from this shared problem such that they perpetuate it and they continue to perpetuate it. So what's really necessary and what's really important, first and foremost, is that we reach the perpetrators, and to a degree, it may be unhelpful to a person to consider others as perpetrators. It's hard, it is hard to comb through all of these harms on an individual basis, but it is necessary as individuals. That's all we can do. All I can do is recognize that ox really mattered. That ox's life had value to the ox. The primary value of everyone's life is to them first. You have to be fully conscious of that. And then you have to be informed enough and aware enough to tell the person who's eating their tail in a way that they can hear and feel empowered by and motivated by and understand, and in a way that awakens their compassion rather than their defenses. You have to tell that person that it's not okay in whatever way that you can. You have to enable them to question it. You have to enable them to feel comfortable that they have other options that are not violent. And it is frustrating. It hurts me. It hurts me personally whenever I see people I trust say something that implies that they were ever entitled to the violation or the product of the violation of someone else's body. It hurts. And I don't want to devalue that work that it takes to go through all of these thoughts and all of these emotions. And I mean, it all starts with the first awakening of realizing how bad it is for the other animals on the planet, but we all share the situation, and it does affect every single one of us. There is no answer that's not concern and care and service to one another. And as animal advocates, we would always do better, and we would always benefit from recognizing the animal first. You know how in other circles they say person first? We have to really recognize the animal first, whether that is in an emotive way, whether that is in a physically threatened way. The way a lot of humans will be they will trigger their physical fear whenever they're confronted with something that is requiring a major lifestyle change of them, when they haven't fully made the connection that it's in alignment with their own heart, right? Somebody who is on some level realizing that there's no use of other animals, that's okay, but hasn't really connected that to their heart, they're going to have a hard time. They're going to immediately think of starving rather than the fact that there's always a way. They don't know that there's always a way. They don't know any better. They don't know that beans and rice and lentils, they don't know that it's cost effective. They don't know that it's healthy. They don't know that the planet is dying and that they can do something about it with their food. They don't know. They just know this is really bad, and they don't want to be really bad, morally. It's my belief that the morality is the origin of the reasons why all of this is congruent. Like, the fact that it's the correct thing to do in a moral sense is supported by and is followed by the fact that it's good for your body, the fact that it's good for society, the fact that it's good for the planet, the fact that it's good for our ecosystems, and all of the other little trickle-down effects. But those little trickle-down effects build the fact that it's the right thing to do. You can be a vegan, like an ethical vegan. You can hate vegetarians and be an ethical vegan, and you can be vitriolic and horrible to other people, and you can make them feel small and hated and evil. And you will be right about the fact that you shouldn't kill other people, but the entire structure that makes that thing right will be lost to you because you're weaponizing goodness. You're weaponizing peace. Like, how can you be comfortable with that? We come from this one situation. I don't know. I just wanted to talk about that. I keep thinking about how vegetarians are not an enemy, and and I've indulged in it before too, in this like superiority complex where I've used like mean words like cheese, breather, or whatever to like describe the way people are so attached to their cheese, rather than just like really go into it. Like, all right, let's talk about plant-based cheeses. Let's talk about the symbolism of motherhood. Let's talk about all of these things, rather than just hurl insults at one another. I don't know. There's always a way to do it. There's always a way. There's always a way. And that way is going to be with love. And you got to find it. You just have to be committed to the peace and the love and the congruency and the harmony. You have to be committed to that first before being right. Just let yourself change. Let other people change. Help them do it. Help yourself do it. We're all in this together. Nobody's disposable. Nobody's trash. Nobody is not involved. So let's help each other.